Hey guys, tonight we're headed somewhere loud, sunburned, and surprisingly snackless, ancient Greece. You're trudging up a dusty hill toward a theater carved into the side of a mountain, sandals flapping, tunic sticking to your back, the smell of goat lingering uncomfortably close. The crowd around you roars with excitement, the stone seats are already full of sweaty citizens yelling in 3 different dialects, and you, poor thing, don't even have a single salted almond. Theater in ancient Greece isn't the refined whisperfest you might imagine. It's noisy, chaotic, and frankly smells a little like fermented onions. Dionysus, god of wine, madness, and performance, presides over this wild affair. The only problem? He's deeply annoyed by how uncomfortable the entire experience is. You sit on a jagged limestone slab, no backrest in sight, while someone's knee pokes into your side. Children are already crying, and the play hasn't even started. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where, and when, you're tuning in from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You glance around the theater of Dionysus. Yes, it's literally named after him, where thousands gather under the sun to watch hours of tragedy and comedy. The mood is a weird mix of reverent and rowdy. People chant, cheer, and occasionally hurl insults. You're just trying to stay conscious through the 5th monologue delivered by a man in a clay mask shaped like a cow. Dionysus watches from somewhere nearby. Not in full god mode, no thunderbolts or transformations tonight, but quietly annoyed. He's proud of his theatrical invention. He gave mortals drama, masks, music, and the art of performance. But he forgot something critical: audience comfort. Historians still argue whether Greek theater was meant more for civic bonding or spiritual enlightenment, but all of them agree on one thing: those stone benches were not built for 3-act epics. There's no padding, no shade, and absolutely no food allowed. Yet every festival, thousands endure the discomfort like it's a religious duty, which, technically, it is. You shift on your seat again and your hip bone pops. A man next to you pulls out a water skin and offers a sip. It tastes like regret and fermented figs. You politely decline the second round. Dionysus, floating invisibly somewhere above the crowd, sighs. Mortals can't be expected to enjoy high art with rumbling stomachs and splintered tailbones. Something must be done. But what? He tries whispering inspiration into the minds of a few attendees, nothing too obvious. Just a suggestion: bring something to nibble next time. But early attempts don't go well. One ambitious woman brings roasted onions wrapped in palm leaves. She's ejected before the chorus even enters. You lean over to your friend and murmur that maybe you should have brought something yourself. He rolls his eyes. It's sacred theater. Not a picnic. Still, he's chewing something suspiciously sticky. The sun beats down, and the scent of humanity intensifies. You wonder, for the 100th time, how the Greeks managed to make culture this uncomfortable. A priest steps forward to deliver the opening hymn to Dionysus. Everyone quiets. The music starts. It's beautiful, actually. You close your eyes. Maybe this is worth it, the spine aches and dehydration. Maybe art can transcend discomfort. Then someone sneezes into your hair and you remember, this is still a public event. Behind the scenes, the god of theater mutters to himself. They honor me with songs and suffer through this. His plan had been to give mortals divine ecstasy through performance, not sunburn and boredom. Clearly, some adjustments are needed. A mainstream historical fact: the city Dionysia festival in Athens, one of the largest celebrations of Dionysus, featured competitions in tragedy and comedy, with plays performed in a marathon over several days. It was both religious rite and public spectacle, and everyone who was anyone attended. Still, few remember the part where you had to sit for up to 8 hours on stone steps, possibly in the rain, possibly hungover from the night before. And yet, no one seems to question the setup. Not even the fact that there's nowhere to buy food or take a quick stretch. Theater, it turns out, is more like a trial than a treat. At least in its earliest form. You shift again and try to focus on the play. A man in a mask is pretending to be a god pretending to be a mortal. It's confusing, but everyone around you laughs, so you do too. The wind stirs and someone's scroll blows into your lap. You pretend to read it. It's a shopping list, written in smudged charcoal: wine, olives, goat cheese, something labeled fig surprise. You look up and see a child in the front row trying to gnaw a dried fig in secret. His mother slaps it out of his hand. No eating in the sacred space. Dionysus narrows his eyes. That's it. If mortals won't invent snacks for themselves, he will. Not with thunder or divine decree. That would be too obvious. No, he'll nudge things along. Influence some food trends. Plant ideas in dreams. The way only a mischievous god can. Some say Dionysus's domain is wine, but it's more than that. He's the god of loosening boundaries, between human and god, reason and madness, tragedy and joy. So, why not loosen the grip on no-snack rules too? A quirky tidbit: the Greeks often associated divine inspiration with intoxication. Not just wine, but music, dance, and even food were believed to alter consciousness and bring people closer to the gods. So technically, a honeyed pastry could be seen as a sacrament. If Dionysus has his way, it might be. The chorus returns, and you lean back on your elbows. A breeze rolls through the amphitheater. Someone yawns. You hear a faint rumble. Was that your stomach or Dionysus pondering his next move? Either way, something's changing. You can feel it in the air. The gods are restless. And the age of the theater snack is about to begin, in the most chaotic, clumsy way possible. You're still stuck on that rock-hard bench, aren't you? The play continues, now featuring a goat chorus and a surprisingly graphic metaphor about turnips, but you're starting to drift. The heat has reached the boiled olive stage. Someone nearby fans themselves with a clay mask. Another hums quietly, hoping to stay awake. You, of course, are trying not to slide sideways off the seat entirely. Dionysus, hovering somewhere between reality and theatrical flair, is getting increasingly frustrated. His sacred festival, the one meant to elevate mortals into divine ecstasy through drama, has instead become a test of physical endurance. The chorus is lovely, sure. But so is a nap. Time to intervene, but gently. He doesn't want thunder or earthquakes. He wants a whisper. A craving. A tiny voice in someone's ear that says, you know what would really complete this third act? A snack. But Dionysus isn't just the god of theater. He's the god of wine, of wild parties, of ecstatic cults where people lose themselves in dance, music, and fermented drinks. His earliest worshippers didn't sit quietly watching plays, they danced. They wore animal skins, carried ivy-covered staffs, and ran barefoot through forests howling his name. Fun fact, women played a central role in these rituals, often dancing in trance-like states called enthusiasmus, meaning to be filled with the god. So, when the theater first emerged from these wild rites, it was a sanitized version of madness. Civilization tried to tame Dionysus. Stick him in a playbill. Carve a stone theater and call it sacred. But you know how gods get when you try to put them in a box. Dionysus misses the wildness. He misses the freedom, the rhythm, the shared wine, and yes, the spontaneous food. Cult gatherings often included little treats. Honey cakes. Figs. Nuts wrapped in leaves. Nothing fancy, but flavorful and forbidden. The kinds of snacks that sneak past temple guards and make you giggle under your breath. Historians still argue whether early Dionysian rites directly led to Greek theater or if theater emerged later, trying to imitate the ecstatic energy of his cult. But either way, the transition was rough. What began as primal became formal, stiff, reverent, and worst of all, snackless. You glance down at the ground below the tiered seats. A dog roots around in the dust for dropped grapes. A child cries because someone told him he can't bring his bread roll into the performance space. And Dionysus watches, eyes gleaming with mischief. You feel a weird urge to munch on something sweet. Not hunger exactly, just the idea of food. Maybe a fig soaked in honey. Or warm bread crust with a bit of garlic rubbed on the surface. You sigh. You'd sell your left sandal for a handful of almonds. Nearby, two men whisper. One produces a small clay container from his robe. The other leans in eagerly. You hear soft crunching. The scent wafts over, dried chickpeas with herbs. Definitely not allowed. A priest passes by, frowning. The clay pot vanishes. That's the trouble. The system doesn't allow for indulgence, but indulgence is the whole point of Dionysus. So, the god starts small. He sends dreams to a few priests, visions of lavish theater picnics with cheeses from Crete and olives stuffed with herbs. One wakes up sweating and decides it's a message. Another just craves goat meat all day. Then, a more radical plan: what if theater could be more like the cult gatherings? What if, instead of punishing the body for the sake of the soul, the two could work together? A quirky tidbit: some Dionysian mystery cults believe that tasting certain foods at the right time, under the influence of music or ritual, could unlock spiritual visions. So your craving during Act 3 might actually be sacred. You lean forward, trying to stay awake, but the play is dragging. A nobleman monologues about hubris while someone behind you snores softly. That's when it happens. The man 2 rows ahead stands up and, scandal of scandals, pulls out an entire loaf of stuffed bread. Not just a crusty roll. This is stuffed. With herbs, maybe goat meat, maybe something pickled. There's a collective gasp. A priest hurries toward him. Rules are rules. But Dionysus is faster. The priest trips over a sandal. A divine breeze, and sprawls on the steps. The loaf rolls down the aisle like a slow, delicious prophecy. And you reach out, catch it, and tear off a piece without thinking. It's warm. Flaky. A little salty. For a moment, the world stops. The monologue continues, but your taste buds are doing their own performance. People start whispering. Did you see that? He caught the bread. I think the gods approve. One old woman nods sagely. A sign, she murmurs. Dionysus is hungry. Now the theater guards are unsure. Do they confiscate the bread? Or let it pass? You sneak another bite, pretending you're deeply moved by the tragedy unfolding on stage. Tears well in your eyes, but from joy, not pathos. Dionysus smiles. Not a big miracle, but enough. A crack in the no-snack code. Just the beginning. A mainstream historical fact: the earliest Greek theaters didn't have official food vendors or concessions, and bringing food was often frowned upon. However, evidence suggests some attendees secretly brought personal snacks, especially during long festivals. Humans, after all, are creatures of habit, and hunger. The sun begins to lower. The final act starts. You're now full of contraband bread and possibly touched by a god. You look up and whisper, "Thank you, Dionysus." He hears you. And somewhere in his wine-stained mind, a new idea is forming: snacks for all. But first, he'll need to test some recipes. Trial and error. Possibly a few embarrassing disasters. And you, my friend, will be there to witness every one of them, whether you like it or not. You wake from your bread-induced trance to find the tragedy on stage has escalated into full-blown screaming. A man in a horse mask is wailing about betrayal, someone else is bleeding from an obviously fake wound, and the chorus is trying to harmonize in a key that hasn't been invented yet. Honestly, you're more emotionally invested in whether the guy next to you is about to drop a handful of olives on your lap again. Because yes, despite the subtle divine nudge from Dionysus and your heroic loaf-catching moment, not everyone has gotten the memo. One brave soul, clearly inspired by your divine dining, decided to push the snack movement forward during the next performance. His offering? A wooden bowl filled with local olives, briny, wrinkled, and covered in just enough oil to cause widespread tragedy. At first, it seems like a brilliant idea. People pass them around discreetly. The bowl makes its way down the row, gracing fingers sticky with sun and sweat. A few smile. A few gag. One man sucks an olive pit and nearly faints from the salt content. But then, inevitably, disaster strikes. The bowl tips. Slow motion. Olives scatter like tiny oil-slicked marbles across the stone floor, pinging down the aisles. One shoots under the sandal of a particularly dignified magistrate, who, without warning, goes down like a toppled statue, arms flailing, dignity cracking. A gasp ripples through the audience. The actor on stage forgets his next line. A goat bleats backstage. You freeze. The magistrate groans, tries to rise, slips again on a rogue olive, and curses with such dramatic flair that half the crowd applauds, thinking it's part of the performance. Dionysus, watching unseen from above, sighs deeply. So close. Historians still argue whether food-related accidents were common in ancient Greek theaters, but there's one oddly specific record of a city council banning the public display of pickled items during religious festivals. Could be a coincidence. Could be the Great Olive Spill of 423 BCE. Hard to say. After the chaos dies down and the magistrate is dusted off, a new decree is issued: no food in the sacred theater space. Especially not slippery food. Especially not during serious scenes. You slouch in your seat, devastated. The bread miracle had almost started a revolution. But now, thanks to one bowl of oily enthusiasm, the mood has snapped back to sacred silence. Back to aching benches and growling bellies. But Dionysus isn't giving up. He just needs a less treacherous snack. So you drift forward to the next festival. A new season. New plays. New actors. But the same old stone seats and scowling priests. This time, Dionysus sets his sights on something simple. Something handheld. Dry. Safe. A young boy sneaks into the theater with his grandmother. They settle into the back row and, under the cover of her shawl, she pulls out a bundle wrapped in linen. You crane your neck to see what it is. Dried figs. Yes, the fruit of the gods. Sweet, chewy, and most importantly, non-rolling. The boy offers one to a nearby soldier, who accepts with a nod and promptly falls into a nostalgic haze. Tastes like childhood, he mutters. Soon, others catch wind of the aroma. That telltale blend of sugar and fermentation. Someone clears their throat. The old woman glares back. There for his health, she hisses. He gets faint. Sure he does. A quirky tidbit: figs were one of the most common fruits in ancient Greece, often dried and stored for the winter. Some athletes even swore by them as a source of energy before competitions. A fig a day keeps the oracle vague, as they say. Anyway, the figs start making the rounds. At first, cautiously. Then more boldly. One actor on stage smells the sweetness and breaks character for a moment, visibly distracted. The audience chuckles. Then it happens. The boy, overexcited by a punchline in the comedy, tosses a fig at the stage. Light-hearted, playful. It bounces off the actor's mask with a soft thunk. Everyone laughs. Including the actor. But a priest, always nearby, rushes forward. Desecration, he cries. Food must not fly where the sacred masks speak. The crowd groans. Someone mutters, "It was a joke." Another says, "Let the gods decide." A third yells, "It's just a fig." Dionysus, grinning, lets it play out. He doesn't stop the priest, but he doesn't strike down the child either. He just lets the tension simmer. Historians still argue whether this incident led to the legendary fig ban during certain dramatic contests. Records are unclear, but fig sales around the theater did mysteriously drop the following year. As for you, you're still seated mid-row, now figless and frustrated. You thought this round might succeed. But once again, divine munching has been interrupted by mortal pettiness. Still, progress has been made. You notice something different this time: people are talking about snacks. Not just whispering. Talking. Debating. Discussing what counts as respectful consumption. A philosopher in the front row is composing a treatise on the ethical crumble. Another argues that snacking, done mindfully, might enhance dramatic appreciation. You roll your eyes, but secretly, you agree. Snacks just make everything better. And Dionysus? He's not discouraged. He's already moving on to his next idea. Something that won't roll. Won't bounce. Won't stick to your sandals or stain the marble. Something revolutionary. You return to the theater the following year with one goal: don't get caught chewing. By now, you've become something of a connoisseur of illicit snacks. Figs? Too sticky. Olives? Hazardous. Bread? A classic, but crumbs give you away. You've wrapped your offerings in cloth to muffle the rustle. You've learned the art of the casual nibble. You are the whisper of hunger, the ghost of flavor. Dionysus, however, is done playing small. He's ready to go big, or, more accurately, he's ready to go puffed. Somewhere in a village outside Athens, a woman experimenting with barley meal accidentally stumbles upon something glorious. She heats a pan, tosses in crushed barley, and watches as the grains puff up, light as air. She doesn't know it, but she's just invented the proto-snack of dreams: puffed grain, crispy and satisfying, the popcorn of the pre-corn world. She brings a handful to her neighbor. The neighbor brings a basket to market. Within weeks, the entire village is munching on what they call crispemnos, light, dry, and practically designed for theater consumption. Dionysus, delighted, plants the idea into the dreams of a traveling merchant. The merchant, of course, sees the potential. He shows up at the city Dionysia with baskets of puffed barley, salted and spiced with thyme. Now, here's the catch: he doesn't sell it inside the theater. That's still forbidden. He stations himself just outside, catching the eyes of every playgoer who walks by with a pitiful stomach and a slow gait. A few bites for the long show, he croons. For your nerves. For your soul. You pass him, eyes locked, and he nods like you're both in on something cosmic. You take a pouch. You enter the theater. You settle in, watching the stone fill up with bodies, with chatter, with anticipation. The crispemnos sits in your lap, innocent and glorious. And then you hear it, crunch. Somewhere behind you. Followed by a crunch 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 crunch. Dionysus grins. Soon the whole back row is munching in unison, perfectly timed, like a chorus of dry thunder. One person taps the beat of a tragic monologue with the rhythm of barley crunches. Another begins mixing in a hum. A priest turns. His nostrils flare. He sees the crowd, smiling, engaged, awake, and hesitates. This is new. Because here's the thing: the puffed barley doesn't distract. It enhances. People are more focused. They're laughing harder, crying more. Something about the rhythmic chewing, the soft crackle, the shared joy, it binds them. A mainstream historical fact: ancient Greeks often consumed barley as a staple, forming it into porridge, bread, or thin cakes. Some scholars believe forms of roasted or puffed grain may have been eaten, though the record is fuzzy. What's clear? Barley was beloved, and anything that made it more interesting had staying power. And speaking of staying power, you're halfway through the play and still alert. No drifting. No drooling. Just you, your Crispemnos, and a suspiciously good mood. The actors notice. Their performance sharpens. The audience responds. For the first time in what feels like centuries, everyone's in sync. But you know what that means, right? Someone's going to ruin it. Midway through the final act, a wealthy noble, clearly offended by the collective joy, stands up and yells, "Is this a playhouse or a pantry?" People ignore him. He escalates. "This is sacred ground. You dishonor the muses with every bite." Someone offers him a handful of Crispemnos. He swats it away. It hits a priest in the eye. Silence. Historians still argue whether this moment led to the infamous Barley Rebellion, but accounts do agree that a brief pause in the festival occurred that year while city officials debated the future of food at theatrical events. Some sources even mention a secret council dubbed the Crispus Committee, formed to determine whether crunchy snacks violated divine sanctity or merely enhanced mortal attention spans. Meanwhile, Dionysus is both amused and frustrated. He's proven the value of theater snacks. But mortals, bound by rules and reputations, are too nervous to embrace the crackle. He needs a workaround. A loophole. So he reaches out, not to the high priests or playwrights, but to the vendors. The market folk. The grape sellers. The street chefs who fry cheese on open pans and drizzle honey like rain. The bakers who shape sesame into spirals and smile when they catch you staring too long. He whispers into their dreams, "Bring your flavors. Bring your flair. But keep it outside the gates. For now." And they do. Soon, a ritual emerges. People arrive hours early for the theater. Not to secure better seats, but to feast beforehand. The roads leading to the amphitheater become a symphony of smells. Fried fish. Roasted chickpeas. Spiced nuts. Honey-drenched pastries. Grilled lamb cut from skewers still steaming. The pre-theater snack walk is born. A quirky tidbit, archaeological digs near ancient theaters have uncovered food debris, bones, shells, seeds, suggesting that, despite official rules, people found ways to eat before, after, and maybe even during performances. Whether legal or not, the appetite was very, very real. And you? You embrace it. You show up early. You stroll through the vendor lanes. You inhale every scent like it's a sacred offering. You barter for sesame spirals and lick honey from your fingertips. You even grab some Crispemnos for old time's sake, slipping it into your pouch with a wink toward the sky. Because you know Dionysus is watching. He hasn't won yet. But he's definitely getting louder. You shuffle into the amphitheater with sticky fingers and a stomach full of questionable cheese. The sun is rising behind the stage, casting long shadows over the marble seats. Birds are circling overhead, probably hoping to snatch a dropped pastry. The scent of roasted chickpeas still clings to your tunic. You are, in a word, primed. So is everyone else. Because Dionysus, ever persistent, has finally hit upon a strategy mortals can't resist: food as ritual. Not just sneaky bites or whispered crunches, but full-blown ceremony. The snack walks outside the theater have evolved. They've become pre-show processions. Grandmothers blessing fig cakes with sprigs of thyme. Fathers teaching their sons how to properly char fish heads over a portable brazier. Musicians playing reed pipes while vendors chant prices like hymns. What began as scattered snacking is now a social phenomenon. You walk the lanes with awe. One cart has rebranded fried goat cheese as musique morsels. Another offers sesame sticks, infused with dramatic tension. There's even a boy in a tunic painted like a theater mask handing out candied almonds in little woven bags. A mainstream historical fact, Greek religious festivals, especially those honoring Dionysus, were as much about feasting and celebration as they were about worship. Food, wine, music, and performance were deeply interwoven, less about solemn piety, more about ecstatic release. So naturally, the line between sacred and snackable blurs. But not everyone's thrilled. Enter the purists. This is a loose, mostly scowling group of older citizens, self-appointed guardians of proper theatrical decorum. They wear gray tunics, bring no children, and spend most of the show glaring sideways. You recognize their leader immediately. It's the same magistrate who slipped on the olive 2 years ago. He still walks with a limp. He still holds a grudge. This year, he's lobbying hard for what he calls the Acoustic Sanctity Act. His proposal: ban any food that produces sound within a 20 drachma radius of a priest. He presents this with all the gravity of a war general, citing the trauma of lost lines, interrupted monologues, and food-flung injuries. You listen from the crowd. You chew your sesame stick, pointedly. Crunch. The magistrate locks eyes with you. That right there. But something's shifted. Where once the crowd might have agreed, might have tooted and nodded and tightened their belts, now, they chuckle. Someone even offers the magistrate a stuffed fig, purely out of spiteful hospitality. Dionysus is pleased. Still, the fight isn't over. The purists aren't wrong, exactly. The crunches do interrupt. The smells do distract. There was that one time a man dropped his honey pastry onto a stranger's lap and they wound up loudly arguing during the climax of Orestes. So Dionysus does what gods do best, he adapts. He sends inspiration, not to the elite, not to the playwrights or priests, but to the children. One girl, no more than 10, shows up to the next play with something new, a paste of nuts and honey, rolled tightly and wrapped in fig leaves. Quiet. Portable. Smells divine. Doesn't crumble. Doesn't roll. Doesn't make a sound. She shares it with the boy next to her. He shares it with his mother. She slips one to the vendor nearby, who immediately recognizes potential. Within a week, they're everywhere. Dionysus doesn't even have to whisper anymore. The idea spreads like wildfire, silent snacks. Some are made of ground dates and crushed sesame. Others use dried apple mixed with cinnamon bark. They're wrapped in cloth, tied with thread, sometimes shaped like little masks for extra flair. A quirky tidbit: while these specific snack rolls aren't mentioned in classical texts, ancient Greeks were incredibly inventive with their food preservation and portability, especially during long festivals. Food historians speculate that early forms of energy bars, for lack of a better term, were made for both soldiers and celebrants on the go. You, of course, get your hands on one. The moment you bite in, it's like honeyed thunder inside your skull, but nobody else hears it. It's the perfect blend of satisfaction and stealth. You lean back, nibbling like a spy. The actors perform with renewed focus. No crunches, no chaos. Just the sound of sandals on stage, the rise and fall of dramatic voices, and 1,000 silent chewers tucked discreetly into the rows. Even the purists are confused. The magistrate scans the crowd, lips pursed, waiting for someone to offend. But all he sees is stillness. Calm. Politeness. He glares at a boy whose cheeks are suspiciously full. Are you chewing? The boy shrugs, swallows, and says, just breathing. The crowd snickers. The magistrate deflates. Dionysus beams. You glance around the theater, now filled with contented silence, and realize something: the snacks haven't disappeared, they've just evolved. Adapted. They've become an unspoken code, a shared ritual. It's no longer about rebellion. It's about rhythm. Softness. Subtlety. And then it happens again, because of course it does. An actor, mid-soliloquy, pauses. He stares into the crowd. squints. Points to the front row. "Sir," he says, "are you eating an eel?" Gasps. Whispers. A sharp intake of breath. The man in question, a wealthy noble with a fondness for culinary bravado, slowly holds up a skewered river eel, glazed in some kind of pomegranate sauce. A single drop lands on the marble step. The actor mutters, "We're doomed." And indeed, it all begins again. You knew it couldn't last. The harmony. The quiet chewing. The understated elegance of honey paste wrapped in fig leaf. It was all going too well. Because then came the eel guy. There he sits, second row, center, in a robe embroidered with what appears to be real pearls, slowly unwrapping a skewer as if he's unveiling a masterpiece. The scent is ambitious. Smoky, fishy, tangy with vinegar and fruit. A breeze carries it uphill, and by the time it reaches you, you've lost all memory of the play's plot and are instead picturing a fermented river. The actor on stage pauses again. His line hangs in the air like a forgotten string of laundry. The front rows lean away from the eel, some covering their noses with their sleeves. And yet, the noble continues. Chewing. Proudly. Eyes closed, as if transported by the flavors of Poseidon himself. You blink. Surely this man knows what he's doing. He must understand the rules, not official rules, of course. Dionysus never carved them into marble. But there is an unspoken contract now. Keep it simple. Keep it quiet. Keep it, for God's sake, non-aquatic. But no. He's not just breaking the snack code. He's challenging it. And that's how it begins, the snack wars. A mainstream historical fact, ancient Greek elites often used public events, like festivals, to display status, through clothing, jewelry, and yes, food. Bringing exotic or expensive snacks to the theater wasn't unheard of. In fact, food could be a powerful flex. If you had access to imported dates from Egypt or rare cheeses from the Peloponnese, you didn't just eat them, you displayed them. The eel guy, then, isn't alone for long. Next play, someone shows up with tiny grilled quail eggs served in a bronze cup. Then it's pomegranate glazed lamb cubes on toothpicks. Then it's deep-fried cheese balls shaped like tragic masks, biting into one supposedly releases honey from the tears. Cute. Disturbing. Delicious. Vendors catch on fast. The pre-theater lanes evolve into miniature food festivals. One stall boasts the Dionysian sampler platter, complete with a scroll describing the tragic arc of each flavor profile. Another simply offers forbidden bites, wrapped in red cloth and whispered about with reverence. Soon, the amphitheater resembles a gourmet picnic. And Dionysus? He's conflicted. Because on one hand, this is glorious. His name is sung in the sizzle of lamb fat, in the bubbling of grape syrup, in the joyful groans of overstuffed theatergoers. But on the other hand, this isn't snacking. This is full-on feasting. The plays suffer. People arrive late, distracted by a stall offering octopus bites with a tragic finish. They leave early, weighed down by 3 courses of grape-stuffed pheasant. One man is caught attempting to roast shellfish with a portable brazier in the aisle. Another spills sweet wine on the marble stairs, and the ants discover it before the ushers do. Historians still argue whether this period marked the decadent Dionysia, or the beginning of the gastronomic collapse of public theater. Some claim the gods themselves intervened. Others point to a decline in audience attention and a rise in food-related squabbles. One scroll even describes a fight that broke out over who had the crispiest olive, which remains deeply stupid yet somehow plausible. You, meanwhile, are torn. You love a good bite of honeyed cheese like anyone else. But it's hard to focus on a monologue about death and honor when the couple behind you is arguing over whether their lemon sauce has enough zest. You find yourself craving the old fig leaf days, the quiet, the simplicity, the sacred chew. And you're not alone. Whispers start circulating. Not from the purists this time, they're still in shock after someone served pan-seared goose on a Dionysian reduction during a particularly somber funeral scene, but from the actors. They're exhausted. One performer complains that her best scene was upstaged by someone unwrapping a sausage-stuffed grape leaf mid-sob. Another says he tried to deliver the death of Agamemnon only to hear someone loudly slurping a honey drink with a reusable bronze straw. Actors begin staging microstrikes. No, really. They'll start a scene, see someone unpacking a mini mezzi platter, and immediately freeze. One even walks off stage muttering, "I studied 10 years for this." So Dionysus, ever crafty, tries another approach. He sends dreams, not to the vendors or the nobles, but to a playwright. A tired one. A man named Philomenes, known more for his insomnia than his insights. Dionysus slips him an idea while he naps on a sack of lentils. The next morning, Philomenes wakes up, scribbles for 3 straight hours, and submits his play to the festival under a curious title. The Feast That Silenced the Gods. People are intrigued. They flock to it, snacks in hand, ready for another performance of tragedy, comedy, and baked eel. But what unfolds is unexpected. The play opens on a massive banquet. All the characters eat loudly. They describe their food in agonizing detail. One character spends 5 minutes talking about the mouthfeel of chickpeas. Another delivers a monologue while slowly unwrapping grape leaves. There's a full 3-minute pause for dramatic chewing. The crowd is puzzled. Then irritated. Then, quiet. Because they realize, it's a mirror. Philomenes is holding up the snack-glazed face of theatergoers everywhere, showing them exactly how ridiculous they've become. The chewing. The distractions. The mess. By the end, when the gods descend in silence, appalled by the mortals' inability to listen or reflect, there is no applause. Just, stunned silence. Then slow, hesitant clapping. Then a wave of realization. That night, for the first time in years, the streets outside the theater are quiet. No vendors shouting. No goat cheese sizzling. Just the soft sound of sandals and the occasional sniffle. You leave, still chewing your last honey nut roll, but more thoughtfully now. You tuck the wrapper into your pouch. You glance up at the stars. Dionysus has made his point. For now. You wake the next morning with a fig seed stuck to your cheek and a strange sense of peace. Something has shifted. Last night's play, the strange, chewy satire, lingers in your mind like a half-remembered song. You shuffle to the fountain to splash your face, and on the way, you notice something remarkable. The smell of grilling meats is absent. No chickpeas frying in olive oil. No caramelized onions on skewers. Not even the familiar sour puff of vinegar-roasted beetroot. Just the faint scent of stone dust and someone sweeping olive leaves into a pile. Dionysus has gone quiet. Or more accurately, the people have. You make your way back to the theater square, expecting business as usual. The pushy vendors. The experimental eel chefs. The drama students performing unsolicited monologues for coins and compliments. But instead, you see modest baskets. Covered trays. Restraint. You spot the same boy who once peddled candied almonds from a cart shaped like a goat's head. Today he's holding out neat squares of oat cake, wrapped in palm leaf, labeled only, plain. You take one. It tastes like humility. Some say a storm is coming. Others say Philomenes' play was secretly sponsored by the purists. But the truth is much simpler, everyone needed a nap. After months of culinary chaos, the people are exhausted. Their stomachs ache. Their tunics are stained. Their souls are full. And so begins what scholars later call the austerity interlude. A mainstream historical fact, ancient Greek festivals often moved in cycles of excess and restraint, reflecting both the agricultural calendar and religious traditions. Feasting was followed by fasting. Noise by silence. Theater, too, followed this rhythm, one day of raucous comedy, one of tragic silence, one of ritual. Even Dionysus understood this. So now, rather than indulgence, the city turns toward reflection. Not everyone agrees, of course. You pass a pair of girls whispering near a stall. One peeks out from under her basket, revealing a still warm apricot tart. She catches your eye and raises a finger to her lips. You nod. Some secrets are sacred. But for the most part, the snack scene goes from technicolor to sepia. From theater-scented street food to carefully packed rations. Even the plays reflect this shift. Gone are the lavish mask pageants and food-themed farces. In their place, stark monologues, silent choruses, and sets built entirely of driftwood. The critics call it the quiet turn. The actors, secretly relieved to no longer compete with deep-fried distractions, call it a miracle. And yet, beneath the silence, something stirs. One day, a stranger arrives. You notice him because his robe is a deep plum, embroidered with tiny golden grapes. He walks with a lazy elegance, trailing a small cart behind him. No one knows his name. Some say he was sent by Dionysus. Others say he's just another ambitious snacksmith looking to change the game. But he sets up his cart without fanfare and hangs a tiny sign. For your ears only. You approach, curious. He smiles faintly and slides you a small cone made of woven palm. Inside, puffed rice, air roasted over lemonwood, dusted with fennel. Whisper crispy. Barely audible. You lift one to your mouth, chew carefully. The sound is like a footstep on moss. A breeze in barley. You look at him. He winks. Because here's the twist, the snacks are back, but now, they're engineered for silence. It spreads. Vendors take note. Recipes are revised. Crunch becomes fluff. Crackle becomes crumble. Noise becomes nuance. One stall begins selling hushed grapes, dried and flattened to avoid the juicy squish. Another offers Sai biscuits, made of almond flour and olive oil, so light they barely exist. A boy sells mute olives, pickled in salt and honey until they dissolve on the tongue without a pop. A quirky tidbit, some modern food historians believe certain ancient recipes were developed specifically for social occasions requiring quiet, religious rites, morning feasts, and yes, theater. Techniques like soft roasting, air drying, and paste binding reduced noise and increased portability. The noble classes, always looking for the next trend, jump in fast. They commission designer silence. One woman debuts her cloak of crumbs, a shawl with secret pockets for apricot flax paste squares. Another hires a perfumer to mask her snack smells with a theatrical bouquet of rosemary and forgotten tears. Dramatic? Yes. Excessive? Also yes. But it works. Suddenly, the theater is alive again. Not loud, not chaotic, just balanced. The actors speak, and people listen. The crowd laughs at the jokes, gasps at the twists, weeps at the deaths, all while sucking quietly on licorice lozenges shaped like tiny amphoras. Even the magistrate seems confused. He shows up one day, expecting the usual snack battle, only to find a crowd so disciplined he can't even find an olive pit to confiscate. He squints, mutters, and sits down in defeat. Dionysus, from his perch in the unseen world, sips something fizzy and sighs contentedly. But here's where things get strange. Because with silence, comes space. 4 other things. You notice it first during a lull between scenes. A small child turns to his father and whispers, "What if the hero doesn't die?" Someone nearby adds, "What if the villain isn't wrong?" Unprompted theories begin to swirl through the hush. Observations. Counterarguments. Appreciation. The silence isn't empty, it's full of thinking. And Dionysus, ever clever, begin seeding new ideas. Not just plays, but experiences. Pop-up performers hidden in the crowd. Shadow puppets during intermissions. Secret notes tucked inside snack wrappers. Look left. Someone loves you. You're missing the moonrise. The real drama is behind you. And sure enough, you turn, and see a marriage proposal unfolding on the back steps of the amphitheater, two lovers embraced beneath the marble shadows. The city has turned a corner. Food is no longer a distraction. It's part of the myth. The snack scene, now refined and whisper soft, begins to inspire something deeper, a kind of reverence. You sit in the amphitheater, palm cone of spiced millet puffs resting in your lap, and listen not only to the play, but to the rhythm of the crowd. The occasional giggle. The sigh of a scarf being adjusted. The almost imperceptible crinkle of a fig peel. It's no longer about the snacks themselves. It's about the ritual. You find yourself arriving early. Not to get a seat, those are never a problem for someone with your incredible ability to appear harmless, but to watch the pre-play dance of audience preparation. People don't just plop down anymore. They settle. They arrange their food, unwrap it slowly, fold their wraps like origami, and place them reverently on stone beside them. There's an unspoken choreography now. The man with the quietest snack always gets a nod from the front row. Children are taught to chew between scenes. Someone even starts offering classes in silent savoring. A mainstream historical fact, the Greeks didn't just love theater, they revered it. Attendance was considered a civic duty. Citizens, especially in Athens, were often paid to attend major festivals. The theater was where culture, religion, politics, and public dialogue intersected. It was more than a show. It was society at work. And with the rise of these hushed snacks, a new cultural code develops. It's subtle, but powerful. You start to recognize the layers. A soft barley wafer during a comedy signals openness to joy. A chewy grapeskin roll during a tragedy says, I came to feel something. Honey-glazed almonds taken one by one suggest contemplation. Two at once. Ambition. A pause mid-snack, eyes closed. You've just tasted an idea, not a flavor. It's ridiculous. It's brilliant. It's theater. But, as always, the peace doesn't last. Because while everyone is nibbling politely on olive paste petals, someone new is watching. From the shadows. Lurking behind columns. Breathing heavily and fidgeting with a leather pouch. You spot him on a Wednesday. He sits too upright. He doesn't take notes. He doesn't snack. Instead, he stares. Not at the actors, but at the snacks. Every crumb. Every peel. Every glint of sesame. And a week later, he returns. But this time, he brings something with him. A scroll. You don't think much of it. Until others show up with scrolls, too. And then, small slates. Tablets. Styluses. Then, a miniature abacus rigged to record chew cycles. You realize, too late, what's happening. The snack data age has begun. A fringe tidbit, while most of our understanding of Greek theater comes from scripts and commentary, there is evidence of obsessive food cataloging in other areas of life, such as the symposia, drinking parties, and healing temples. Some priests even documented food's emotional effects, believing that certain herbs enhanced not just digestion but dreams and memories. And now, someone is applying that logic to theater snacks. You overhear a conversation behind you. Millet puffs during Act 3 raise cognitive empathy by 11%. No, it's honeyvine fig cubes. They amplify thematic retention. There's a scroll about it. The amphitheater, once a sanctuary of quiet indulgence, is becoming a lab. Vendors start branding their snacks not by taste, but by effect. Pathos plums, cry faster, feel deeper. Tragic trail mix, boosts memory of moral lessons. Chorus chips, for synchronized reactions. You chuckle. But deep down, you're intrigued. You try a wisdom wafer before a particularly abstract satire about hubris and wine. You follow it with a sip of clarity cordial. And sure enough, halfway through, something clicks. You laugh before the joke lands. You murmur, ah, as the tragic twist unfolds. Historians still argue whether this period marks the snack enlightenment or the great overthinking. Some believe it elevated the audience's experience. Others argue it ruined spontaneity. One tablet from this era actually includes a formula for the perfect pre-monologue meal: 3 pine nut spheres, 1 olive, half a fennel root. Chew slowly. Think faster. But you missed the mystery. There was a time when food at the theater meant curiosity. A bite that surprised you. A scent that lingered, just faintly, through a climactic scene. Now everything is calculated. Predicted. Labeled for optimal emotional response. One day, during a particularly long comedy about a man who marries a donkey, don't ask, you find yourself clutching a new snack, inside olives, pressed for moral clarity. You eat one. And then, nothing. No rush of understanding. No emotional epiphany. Just olive. Just salt. Just quiet. You look around. Everyone is chewing. Slowly. Methodically. Predictably. You think of Dionysus. The god of madness. Of chaos. Of wild abandon and untamable joy. Would he approve of this? Or would he be hiding behind a marble column, eating grilled eel just to shake things up again? The next day, you go looking for something different. You wander past the labeled stalls, past the scroll pushers, past the chorus-approved chew toys. At the very edge of the market, you find an old woman selling nothing. Just a box. You ask her what's inside. She lifts the lid. Inside, a single piece of bread. Flat. Dark. Barely larger than a coin. What is it, you ask? She smiles. I don't know. You eat it. And for the first time in weeks, you taste something real. It's smoky. It's bitter. It's sweet. It lingers. You don't know what to do with it. You sit down. And think. You don't write it down. You don't measure your pulse. You don't calculate your comprehension. You just feel. And when the lights go down that night and the play begins, an old story about gods and mortals, laughter and loss, you lean forward. No snack. No scroll. Just you. And the story. And Dionysus, somewhere out there, smiling through a mouthful of mystery. The next morning, you wake up still thinking about that mysterious bite of bread. There's no name for it. No label. No claim of cognitive enhancement or emotional calibration. Just a taste and a memory. And it changes you. You walk through the agora differently now. The stalls that once felt exciting now seem overthought. You pass a booth peddling optimism orbs with lavender drizzle and oat core, and you can't help but roll your eyes. One bite is supposed to make Act 2 feel more redemptive. Another vendor boasts his snacks sync perfectly with rising action. Better than plot, his sign declares. You don't buy any. Instead, you begin to notice others who also wander without chewing. They glance at food, then each other, then away again. Silent recognition. You're not alone. The age of optimized snacking has peaked, and a revolution of subtlety is quietly brewing. Still, the official festival authorities remain clueless. They continue to promote state-sponsored snacks based on emotion curves and scene transitions. One tragic playwright even files a complaint when his recommended regret figs are banned for causing bloating during curtain calls. Dionysus must be laughing. Historians still argue whether this next phase was intentional subversion or mere market fatigue. Either way, the shift happens quickly. The overly engineered snack age starts to collapse under its own complexity. Vendors begin selling kits with instruction scrolls. Step 1, cleanse with vinegary chickpea bark. Step 2, pair with opposite flavor mint dust cluster. Step 3, reflect. Nobody has the patience. One poor boy chokes on his foreshadowing cracker because he didn't pause at the correct plot beat. Soon, whispers of a new trend spread through the amphitheater like a low hum, the return to randomness. You're there the night it starts. It's a tragedy, something about hubris, as usual, but halfway through, a girl sitting 2 rows in front of you opens a pouch, and pulls out a handful of trail pebbles. Not edible rocks, thankfully, but nuts and dried fruit and little cubes of mystery root. There's no label, no instructions, just, whatever fits her hand. She eats slowly. Without rhythm. Without rules. And you hear someone gasp. Not at the stage. At her. Because somehow, that feels revolutionary now. The snack wave shifts again. The next week, vendors quietly begin offering blind baskets, random assortments with no themes, no scene pairing recommendations, and no wellness promises. You get what you get. Could be dates. Could be salted flower roots. Could be olive stuffed with cheese that turns out to be clay. That happens once. You chew carefully. And people love it. A mainstream historical fact, while ancient Greek culture highly valued structure, particularly in tragedy and public ritual, it also prized improvisation and surprise in the form of comedy and satire. The tension between order and chaos was never about one defeating the other. It was about both coexisting, pulsing back and forth like tides. Dionysus, god of both wine and madness, of divine frenzy and sacred ritual, thrives in contradiction. And so do his snacks. Eventually, even the playwrights join the trend. One acclaimed dramatist, Ariston, decides to stage a play called Crumbs, where the plot is determined by whatever snack the audience eats during intermission. If most people pick raisins, the hero survives. If figs dominate, he perishes. If olives, well, the ending gets very weird. You're there that night, clutching your own snack bag like a deity's scale. The lights dim. The chorus enters. Your mouth is dry. You chew. Fennel. Nobody knows what it means. The ending is a complete surprise. Probably even to the playwright. People love it. A quirky tidbit, one philosopher, name lost to time, once proposed that snack choices in theater should be treated like omens. A kind of edible divination. Eat sweet during a tragic monologue. Expect a twist. Choose sour before a romantic scene. Someone's getting dumped. And now, that bizarre idea has become a full-on movement. Snack prophecy. One day, you're handed a bag labeled Fate Mix with the note, "Do not open until climax." You oblige. Inside, one sesame ball, one pickled plum, one dried apple wedge. You don't know what it means. But it feels meaningful. Even the actors get in on it. One thespian, famous for his long-winded death scenes, starts tossing treats into the crowd based on the audience's vibe. If they laugh too early, he throws lemon bark. If they weep too late, he hurls bittersweet jelly. Once, he pelts a critic with beet chips. No one blames him. This is no longer just snacking. It's collaboration. You, the audience, have become part of the myth-making. Your choices, what you bite, when you bite it, whether you chew or hold it on your tongue like a sacrament, all shape the experience. Suddenly, snack and story are inseparable. One night, a man offers you a caramelized lotus root before a scene in which the protagonist must choose between love and power. You eat it. And in the stillness that follows, you feel sympathy. Not for the hero, but for the villain. And just like that, the story becomes new. Because here's the thing, Dionysus never wanted perfection. He wanted participation. Your snack is no longer a break from the play. It is the play. And now, theater becomes a multisensory, immersive, collective act. Not just what you see or hear, but what you taste, what you decide, and what lingers after. But nothing gold can stay. Because even the random, like everything else, eventually gets systematized. The snack profits grow in number. Soon, you can't chew without someone interpreting it. That prune. A sign of betrayal. Those olives. A foreshadowing of forgiveness. Wait, you combine them. You mad genius. That's character development. You sigh. The quiet, unpredictable joy is slipping again. You begin to crave simplicity. Not silence. Not surprise. Just honesty. One evening, you sit on the steps of the theater, feet dusty, breeze warm, snackless for the first time in weeks. A small girl approaches you, holding out a slice of honey bread. No label. No fanfare. She just says, "This is my favorite." You accept. You chew. And for a moment, the entire world feels like an amphitheater again, stories echoing, flavors soft and slow, and Dionysus, somewhere above or below, nodding at your beautiful, boring, snack-filled myth. The honey bread leaves a warmth on your tongue that's more than just sugar. It's memory. Simplicity. Something ancient and direct, like a chorus line sung in unison under an open sky. After everything, fig analytics, sesame symbolism, crunchy chaos, it feels like a soft exhale. You sit a while longer with your elbows on your knees, watching as the crowd slowly trickles in for that evening's play. You don't know the title. It's probably tragic. They almost always are, no matter how many gods show up at the end to fix everything with divine bureaucracy. Still, you walk in. No snack in hand. No pouch tucked into your robes. Just yourself and a curious heart. And that's when something unexpected happens. A man in a tall felt hat steps onto the stage, not an actor, but a priest. His voice is calm, measured. Tonight, he says, we begin with silence. A moment to remember why we gather. And what it means to be both audience and participant. Everyone falls quiet. And into that silence, you hear it. Not a voice. Not music. Not even the crinkle of waxed fig paper. You hear your own breath. And for the first time, you realize something. The snacking, the munching and measuring and mythologizing, was never just about hunger or flavor or distraction. It was a way to anchor yourself in a world too grand and too chaotic to fully understand. A method of saying, I'm here. I'm tasting this moment. I matter. A mainstream historical fact, ancient Greek theater wasn't just entertainment. It was ritual. Sacred. Performed in honor of Dionysus as a form of collective catharsis. The audience was as much a part of the event as the actors. Sometimes more. In Athens, plays were watched by tens of thousands, all emotionally synced by shared story and atmosphere. And snacks? Well, maybe they weren't official. Maybe they weren't blessed by the state. But they were there, silent companions to epic speeches and messy emotions. Quiet little reminders that you were part of this sprawling human drama, too. Historians still argue whether actual food was consumed during formal festivals or if that's a romantic retrofitting. Some say the theater's reverence would have prohibited it. Others point to scattered writings about scented aisles and audience rustlings that suggest otherwise. But you're beyond needing proof. You've lived it. Still, everything shifts again when the High Playwrights Guild, never ones to leave well enough alone, decides to capitalize on the snack prophecy trend. They launch a new initiative, Snack Scripts. It's exactly what it sounds like. Every ticket comes with a snack track, a printed menu tied directly to the scene list. You are instructed to eat certain things at exact lines. Line 74, pomegranate seed, prepares you for grief. Line 122, crunchy barley chip, sharpens moral clarity. Line 238, mint flake, soothes audience unrest. You look at your neighbor as he stares down at his scroll, counting bites like he's tuning an instrument. The actors pause occasionally to allow chewing windows. One actor has to repeat a dramatic monologue because someone dropped a grape at the wrong time. It's chaos. Predictable chaos. The worst kind. You begin to suspect something dangerous. In trying to make the experience perfect, they've made it lifeless. Dionysus is definitely rolling his eyes now. So, you do something small, but quietly rebellious. At line 74, instead of the pomegranate seed, you eat nothing. And the grief? Still comes. At line 122, no barley chip. But you feel the moral weight regardless. At line 238, instead of mint, you let the actor's trembling voice carry you into the pause. And you feel everything. More, maybe. You're not the only one. Soon, others start ignoring their snack tracks. A man rips his into confetti and tosses it like petals. A woman eats everything before the play begins. One boy swaps his menu with another, then eats both snacks at once and declares he's transcended linear time. They laugh. And it's the first honest laugh in weeks. A quirky tidbit: in one surviving fragment from a comic play, an actor is mocked for eating loudly during his own monologue. He blames it on a cursed date fruit, saying it had tragedy baked in. The chorus mocks him for digesting the plot instead of delivering it. You think about that line a lot now. Digesting the plot. There's something poetic about that. But in the wake of the snack script scandal, something gentler emerges. Communal sharing. It begins when an old woman brings a large fig loaf and quietly passes pieces down the row. No labels. No explanations. Just trust. Just generosity. It spreads like wildfire, or butter on warm barley. Before long, entire amphitheater rows coordinate their own snack circles. Everyone brings one item. You eat what you're given. You don't ask. You don't analyze. One night, you receive a sour apple chip, a honeyed sesame spiral, a cube of something that tastes like spiced regret. You chew slowly, carefully, not for optimization, but for connection. And isn't that what Dionysus always wanted? Not mindless indulgence. Not tactical ingestion. Just the sacred collision of pleasure, surprise, and shared experience. In a world of gods and tyrants and plagues and endless war, that soft sweetness shared in silence might be the only real miracle left. The snack revolution reaches its final, gentle form, not a marketplace, not a philosophy, but a gesture. You offer. You receive. You taste. You remember. And somewhere, up in the marble rafters of Mount Olympus, or down in the basement under the amphitheater, Dionysus lounges with his feet up, a smear of grape on his chin, and a tiny smirk curling the edge of his wine-stained lips. Because somehow, through all the chaos and cleverness, you've made his sacred theater human again. That night, you dream in flavors. Not colors, not sounds, flavors. A swirl of lemon rind and cedar. A slow melt of honeydew over dry figure. The crisp snap of roasted chickpea followed by the bloom of fennel on your tongue. No plot. No characters. Just sensation, and the deep certainty that somehow, everything matters. When you wake, the theater is still fresh on your skin. The dust. The closeness. The hush before laughter. It clings to you like the scent of roasted olives after a festival. And you realize something simple and huge. You don't need the theater to be sacred. It already is. But of course, humans being humans, it can't stay simple for long. A new player emerges on the scene, the Philosophical Snack Society, or PSS if you're short on time, or syllables. They arrive in flowing linen robes and mild superiority, claiming that snacks during plays should be carefully selected based on your worldview. Are you a stoic? Almonds and plain barley discs only, no seasoning, no pleasure, only sustenance. Epicurean? Go ahead, indulge in honey-glazed pine kernels and cheese-rippled fruit clusters, but only during comedies. Platonist? Sorry, all theater is illusion, so you'll just sip mint water and imagine a snack. You roll your eyes so hard they nearly pop out of your skull. Historians still argue whether the Philosophical Snack Society was a real organization or just a parody invented by comic playwrights tired of critics eating too loudly. One fragment from a satirical play describes a PSS meeting that devolves into a food fight over the moral implications of cinnamon. Either way, the movement catches on, briefly. Suddenly, audiences start announcing their snack choices like philosophical declarations. I eat olives during tragedies because I believe pain reveals truth. I only eat dates if the hero is flawed, but redeemable. You, being the quiet rebel you are, start bringing random snacks again. No meaning. Just munching. Once, you bring a small pouch of goat milk candy wrapped in grape leaves. No one knows what to make of it. Someone asks if you're cynic or sophist. You just shrug. Maybe you're just hungry. The trend burns bright and burns out fast. Like most things that take themselves too seriously. But it leaves behind something unexpected, a lingering awareness. That what you eat, shapes how you feel. And how you feel, shapes how you listen. And how you listen, shapes the story. A mainstream historical fact, in ancient Greece, the word for taste, jusis, shared etymological roots with knowledge and perception. To taste something was to experience it, directly, physically, and intimately. No surprise then that food and theater would eventually blur into a single act of embodied understanding. You start noticing little things. Someone chewing something bitter during a hopeful monologue flinches at the ending. Someone tasting something soft and sweet during a harsh plot twist tears up more than anyone else. The play doesn't change. The snacks do. And so do you. One night, during a dry, dusty drama about a prince who never learns his lesson, a man next to you offers a strip of candied lemon bark. You take it, chew slowly. The bitterness. The sugar. The rind. And suddenly, the prince doesn't feel stupid. He feels human. You start keeping a little journal, nothing formal. Just snack memories. One entry reads: Tragedy of the starving king, figs, soft cheese, wine-stained barley. Felt the hunger more than the grief. Wonder if that's the point. Another. Comedy of the forgetful wife, date clusters plus laughing. Thought about my sister. Miss her. She'd have loved the goat jokes. These entries pile up until your little book becomes a kind of flavor diary. Not just of snacks, but of responses. It's messy. Subjective. Inconclusive. But it's real. A quirky tidbit: some modern food historians believe the ancient Greeks may have used aromatics, burned herbs, flower garlands, even steaming bowls of spiced oil, to stimulate the audience's senses during key scenes. Not food, exactly. But still an edible atmosphere. Which makes you wonder. What if this whole snack thing isn't new at all? What if it's a memory? A resurrection? One night, you arrive at the amphitheater early. The sun is still high. The stone seats are hot to the touch. You sit in silence, unwrap a small pouch of dried rose petals mixed with candied ginger, and wait. No actors. No chorus. No curtain. Just you and the whisper of the wind through marble columns. You chew. And you feel a story take shape, not outside you, but within. A woman on a mountain, searching for her daughter. A boy with wings, flying too close to something he doesn't understand. A wine god, laughing under a fig tree. None of them speak. But all of them are present. And then the play begins. You don't remember much about the plot. It had something to do with loyalty and loss, with disguises and misunderstandings and a very funny goat. But what you do remember, vividly, is the moment someone near you passed around a pouch of violet honey-dusted almonds. And no one spoke. They just shared. You took one. Chewed. Closed your eyes. And felt seen. Maybe snacks aren't about hunger, or taste, or emotional modulation, or philosophical alignment. Maybe they're just reminders. That you're here. That you matter. That you're part of this, whatever this is. Dionysus doesn't care what you eat. He cares that you feel something when you do. And in that moment, under the open sky, with violet dust clinging to your fingertips and a half-remembered monologue echoing in your chest, you feel more alive than any chorus could ever sing. You lean back. Let the moment linger. And wait for the next flavor to find you. You sit through the rest of the play without really remembering how it ends. The actors bow. The crowd disperses. Someone drops a melon seed that rolls 4 rows down and lands, oddly ceremoniously, at your feet. You don't move. Because something has shifted. Something slow, like the spreading warmth of sun on ancient stone. A quiet knowing that all this, the theater, the snacks, the rituals, is no longer just a story you're watching. It's a story you're in. And not just any story. A flavored one. A scented, sticky, crumb-flecked, occasionally overripe kind of story. The best kind. And just as you're about to rise, to brush off the crumbs and return to the rest of your day, a soft voice whispers from behind you. They're making them again. You turn. An older woman, barely taller than her own staff, smiles beneath a sun hat that's seen better centuries. She nods toward a small cloth pouch clutched in her weathered hand. You recognize the design instantly. It's the lost legend. The pistachio-crusted olive pop. You gasp so hard you nearly swallow your own tongue. She cackles. Didn't think they'd come back, did you? A mainstream historical fact, ancient Greek culinary revivalism wasn't unheard of. Dishes and recipes believed to have vanished would suddenly reappear centuries later, passed down in rural villages, monastic kitchens, or through cryptic references in comedy scrolls. Food was never really lost. Just, waiting. You take the offered pop with reverence. It's smaller than you imagined. Sticky in places. Unevenly coated. One side is almost entirely missing crust. But oh gods! The smell. It's briny and nutty and faintly citrus tart. A scent that doesn't just fill your nose, it tells a story. A boat on choppy waters. A sun-drenched olive grove. A boy pressing pistachios into wet dough while someone off-screen hums an unnameable tune. You pop it into your mouth. And the years fall away. You're 12 again. Or 40. Or 80. Time collapses like a folding fan. You are, briefly, eternal. The old woman leans in. They never really stopped making them, she says. You just had to want them hard enough. Historians still argue whether the pistachio-crusted olive pop ever actually existed or whether it was a collective memory born from overlapping food metaphors in Homeric epics. One theory claims the original pop was actually a metaphor for unity, olive, representing earth, pistachio, for refinement, and crust, as the hard truths of mortal life. You don't care. You want another. She laughs again. Good luck. That was the last one today. I trade in memories, not inventory. Then she vanishes. Not dramatically. Not mystically. Just the slow shuffle of sandals and the vague disinterest of a person with better places to be. You stare at the spot where she stood. Then at your hands. Then at the empty stage. And it hits you. Maybe the best snacks aren't the ones you eat. Maybe they're the ones you remember. You spend the next few days chasing them. The vinegar-smeared chickpea crackers rumored to unlock forgotten dialogue. The sweet onion tart said to induce tears before the sad scene starts. The elusive fig leaf jelly balls that supposedly make boring speeches taste like romance. You taste variations. You interview amphora vendors. You dig through old playbills in search of marginalia, anything to bring the flavors back. One quirky tidbit: an obscure playwright named Androphilos once included a complete recipe for daytime meatballs in the stage directions of his comedy. Not as a joke. As a mood-setting tool. Critics were confused. Audiences loved it. The meatballs were eventually banned when two attendees started sword fighting over the last one. Your hunt leads you to a cellar. Musty. Dark. Smelling of ink, old oil, and the regrets of playwrights long dead. A woman named Doria guards the scrolls. She's got ink-stained fingers, half-moons under her eyes, and the sort of voice that makes you believe in footnotes. She doesn't flinch when you mention the olive pop. She just raises an eyebrow and says, "What are you willing to trade?" You hesitate. You have no coins. No favor tokens. Just a stained copy of a third-rate tragedy and half a pomegranate bar in your pocket. You offer both. She accepts the bar, waves off the tragedy, and pulls a single scroll from a stack labeled mediocre but tasty. It's not a recipe. It's a monologue. A forgotten speech from a Dionysian chorus member who, mid-tragedy, goes rogue and begins describing the perfect snack in ecstatic detail. It reads like gospel. You take it to a cook. He stares at it. Nods slowly. Says he'll try. The next night, he hands you a single bite-sized cube wrapped in a grape leaf. You chew. And then the world tilts. It's not flavor. It's a symphony. It's salt and fat and light and grief. A tasting note of lost love. A hint of laughter during a funeral. A suggestion that maybe you never quite learned to say goodbye. You lean against the wall for balance. The cook nods. You're not supposed to eat more than one. You nod back. You believe him. And you finally understand something big. Something you've been circling for weeks now. Snacks aren't side dishes. They're stories. Compressed. Concentrated. Seasoned and salted down to their essence. Every crackle, every chew, every strange burst of unexpected flavor, it's narrative. And when you eat it, you aren't just feeding your body. You're feeding your memory. Feeding your empathy. Feeding your part in this sprawling, absurd, glorious play called life. And like any good story, you never really finish it. You just carry it with you, tucked between your teeth, behind your tongue, waiting to be shared again. You start carrying a pouch of your own. At first, it's a modest little thing, twine-drawn linen, hand-stitched with an embroidered grape. Inside, a few candied fennel seeds, a date cube wrapped in mint, a sliver of salted cheese nestled in fig skin. But over time, it grows. It becomes less a snack bag and more a portable flavor archive. Each item tells a story. Not of plays or playwrights, but of you, the life you've been quietly scripting one bite at a time. There's the cinnamon-dusted nut cluster you ate the day you cried in public during that overwrought sea battle monologue. The honey thyme biscuit you snuck into a matinee after a breakup, bittersweet and strangely reassuring. The crushed olive crisp someone passed to you in silence just before the final scene of The Reluctant Oracle, where no one learns anything and everyone dies anyway. Historians still argue whether the ancient Greeks truly believed snacks could carry emotional resonance, or whether these stories evolved later through modern interpretive romanticism. Some claim the food merely kept people from falling asleep during 3-hour choral odes. Others point to festival inscriptions urging attendees to taste with the heart as well as the tongue. You don't need a historian to tell you the truth. You've lived it. And now, you notice things more clearly. A boy 3 rows down eats citrus peel during a storm scene and clenches his jaw as thunder cracks. An old couple behind you shares sticky date bars during a wedding speech, whispering lines to each other like it's their anniversary. A little girl, barely tall enough to see the stage, drops a sugar almond in the dirt and still eats it anyway, eyes wide, locked on the hero's first speech. You begin to see the audience as a chorus in their own right. Not the one on stage, the one in the seats. Crunching, slurping, sighing, leaning, passing things back and forth. A polyphonic orchestra of reactions where each snack is a note. And you? You're part of it now. Not just a listener. A participant. You start crafting pairings. Tragedies call for the rich and soft, goat cheese on rosemary bread, or figs with a sharp orange glaze. Comedies. Go playful, puffed chickpea balls, sweet mustard seeds, maybe even the infamous pomegranate poppers that stain your lips and leave a floral aftershock. Dionysian revels. Anything goes, honey wine in tiny sips, spiced almonds, lemon-cured fish flakes you sneak between verses. Not ideal in the heat, but nobody's judging. Well, almost nobody. You once sit next to a self-proclaimed snack purist, who believes eating during a play pollutes the acoustics. He wears sandals so tight his toes are pink. You offer him a caramel time strip during the overture. He glares at you like you offered him spoiled goat. You eat it yourself and enjoy the show. Later, as the hero soliloquizes about fate, you swear you hear his stomach growl. A quirky tidbit, some ancient critics actually published taste reviews alongside their dramatic critiques. One anonymous scroll rates The Love of Laconians as a four-fig tragedy, well-seasoned but lacking in chew. Another calls The Nine Sisters of Syros overly bitter, though partially redeemed by the aftertaste of honeyed ash. You decide to revive the tradition. On a scrap of papyrus, you begin logging each show's snack compatibility. One night, after an unexpectedly moving rendition of Orestes, The Reunion Years, you scribble. Best pairing, apricot-wrapped walnut chunks with sea salt finish. Made the matricide feel kind of justified? Your friends join in. They start writing snack reviews. Leaving flavor notes. Comparing textures to characters. One woman swears that the softness of a goat curd truffle mirrors the tenderness of Act 2. Someone else invents a whole rating system based on chew time. Suddenly, it's a thing. Snack critique culture. Playwrights start taking notice. Some incorporate food more explicitly into their work. A romantic monologue delivered while the hero peels a pomegranate. A deathbed confession spoken between bites of bitter herbs. Even a full scene where the chorus passes out toasted sesame wafers to the front row, to soften your hearts, they say. It works. The audience swoons. The wafers sell out before intermission. And you? You feel like you're watching the world realign around an idea you once thought was a footnote. That snacks matter. Not because they're trendy. Not because they're clever. But because they're real. They anchor you to the moment. Remind you you're alive. Like a warm cup between your palms in the cold. Or a bite of something salty when your heart is too full. You keep collecting flavors. Your pouch expands to a satchel. The satchel becomes a kit. Eventually, you start sharing, offering curated story pairings to first-timers. A spoon of tart grape jelly for Act 1. A sugar slick almond for Act 3. A whisper of mint ash as the curtain falls. Some people laugh. Others cry. One person kisses your hand. It's weird. You kind of like it. And one day, as the curtain rises on a new play, you realize something that stops your breath mid-chew. You haven't thought about the original story in weeks. Not because you forgot it. But because you became it. You are now the character who believed food could shape art. Who believed art could change hearts. Who believed hearts, once changed, could change everything. You close your eyes. Breathe in. Taste the air. And wait for the play to begin. You're in the front row now. Not by accident, by ritual. There's a rule in your town, unspoken but enforced with gentle nudges and knowing glances: the one who brings the most memorable snack gets front row status. Not always the best snack. Not the richest or rarest. Just the one that makes someone say, "I'll be thinking about this for weeks." Tonight, you bring citrus-roasted barley clusters wrapped in fig leather and tied with thyme thread. They're tiny, no bigger than a thumbprint, but dense, sweet on the inhale, smoky on the chew. You hand them out in pairs, each bite designed for shared consumption. The play begins. No one claps. Not yet. Because this is the long silence, a drama so ancient its author is unknown, and so quiet it opens with 9 full minutes of seated contemplation. Not a word spoken. Just actors staring, breathing, blinking in time. The barley clusters help. They give your jaw something to do while your eyes and soul adjust. Each chew syncs you with the stillness on stage, tuning you like an instrument to the gravity of the scene. A mainstream historical fact: the Greeks didn't clap like we do. Applause was more physical, more varied: foot stomps, hand waves, even rhythmic shouting. Sometimes they'd toss laurel leaves on stage. Sometimes, snacks. The best compliment? People leaving the theater in total silence, too moved to speak. Tonight ends that way. And you realize something you hadn't admitted before. You don't just like theater snacks. You live for them. They're not treats. They're ritual. You begin hosting snack workshops. Nothing formal, just lazy afternoons under fig trees where friends and strangers gather to blend flavors, tell stories, and laugh over failed experiments. Someone burns the honey syrup again. Someone else forgets to pit the olives. One woman shows up with rose petal flatbread and accidentally launches a new cult following. Every meeting becomes its own play. Mini-dramas, full of surprise characters, comedic timing, and flavor arcs that rise, peak, and fall. One time, a guest brings an absurdity: sour grape mush set in tiny clay pots. You all groan. But then he reveals the twist. Each pot has a handwritten line of dialogue rolled inside: random, ridiculous, profound. You open one: "I would rather kiss the moon than be reasonable." You laugh so hard you snort time dust. A quirky tidbit: some ancient prank plays, known as satyr scribbles, were written purely as inside jokes for chefs. They'd contain outlandish food references, invented recipes, and character names like Fish Soup of Thebes or Honey Drip Son of Melon. Most were never staged. Some say they were just read aloud during banquets. You start collecting lines like that. Snack quotes. Chewable wisdom. Bite-sized truths that only make sense when your mouth is full and your heart is open. You write them on scraps and tuck them into your flavor archive, between bundles of dried herbs and candied lemon peels. You begin speaking in them, sometimes by accident. One day, during a tense argument with your cousin over borrowed sandals, you mutter, "Even burnt figs deserve applause." Silence. Then laughter. Apology. Forgiveness. The phrase spreads. It shows up on amphory. Graffiti. A child's tunic. You spot it etched into the wooden door of a bakery. And on a snack pouch made by someone you've never met. That's when it hits you. You're not the only one anymore. You started with olives and barley, with crumbs on your lap and juice down your sleeve. But now there's a movement. People talk in pairings. Argue over texture choices. Critique not just the acting, but the aftertaste of the emotional beats. Historians still argue whether the rise of theater snack philosophy was organic or engineered. Some suggest a lost sect of Dionysian priests seeded the idea centuries earlier, using food to encode sacred texts. Others believe it's simply a natural consequence of people wanting more, more from art, from food, from each other. You walk into a show one evening and see it all. A girl no older than 10 unrolls a vine leaf to reveal a sticky ball of honeyed lentil paste. She bites it during a line about grief and smiles like she understands. A man with weary eyes passes a cinnamon fig to a stranger in the dark, just as the lovers reunite in Act 3. In the final scene, someone throws a roasted almond onto the stage, not out of disrespect, but recognition. The actor pauses. Picks it up. Eats it. The crowd exhales as one. Later that night, as you lie beneath a sky painted with gods and moonlight, you realize something else. You haven't seen Dionysus. Not really. Not directly. Not since that night in the temple. But every time a snack connects people. Every time a flavor pulls someone deeper into the story. Every time an almond becomes a love note or a pomegranate seed becomes a prayer. You feel him. Not the wild, grape-smeared, screaming god of chaos and wine. But the whispering one. The one behind the curtain. The one who invented theater not to entertain you, but to feed you. You reach the end not with a bang, but with a chew. One final performance. One final pouch of hand-picked pairings. You've saved it for this, the fall of Melandros, a tragedy so obscure no one can agree whether it's satire, subversion, or just a badly translated shopping list that accidentally made it to the stage. It opens with a donkey monologue. It ends with a loaf of bread catching fire. Somewhere in the middle, a character named Uncle Salt marries a block of cheese. You are enchanted. This is the kind of nonsense that makes everything worth it. Your snack lineup. Playful, layered, just a little weird. Puffed millet dipped in fennel honey. Cracked olive stones for the crunch of irony. Melon rind ribbons soaked in mint brine and hung to dry like laundry. You pass them out like scrolls. Like secrets. The audience is buzzing, not just from the flavors, but from the unspoken joy of being in on it. The play ends with all the actors lying on stage, very still, pretending to be soup ingredients. You rise to your feet and toss a fig. Someone else tosses a nut cluster. A third person gently lobs a cube of candied squash. A soft rain of snacks falls on the cast. Nobody flinches. They just smile, eyes closed. And you realize. You've helped write a new kind of script. One where the audience feeds the actors back. Where the exchange goes both ways. Not applause, not shouting, just sharing. It wasn't about hunger. Never really was. It was about the space between bites. The breath held before a line. The tension just before a flavor lands on your tongue. The way the world tilts slightly when someone beside you whispers, "Here, try this." The quiet revolution of Dionysus wasn't wine, or madness, or masks. It was snacks. Small, chewable truths passed between strangers. Historians still argue whether the snack tradition survived past the Hellenistic age. Some claim the Romans crushed them beneath their obsession with spectacle. Others believe they lingered underground, hidden in kitchens and market stalls, whispered through recipes that start with, "This tastes better when someone else is watching." But you know. You've tasted the evidence. A quirky tidbit: in the ruins of an ancient Aegean theater, archaeologists found a small ceramic dish sealed with beeswax. Inside, remnants of dried apricot, crushed coriander, and a single tooth-marked almond. Nearby, a carving in stone reads, "To eat is to understand." You make that your motto. Years later, children gather around your fire to hear the tale. You don't read from scrolls. You feed them. A bite for sorrow. A pinch for joy. A crumble of spice for the villain's entrance. They grow up fluent in flavor. Fluent in story. And one day, when you're too tired to climb the hill for the spring festival, a boy brings you a pouch. Inside, citrus roasted barley clusters tied with thyme. Your recipe. But better. You smile. Chew slowly. And listen to the sounds of the theater drifting up from the valley. Laughter. Gasps. Foot stomps. And somewhere, a grape being squished. You don't need to see the play to know the story. You helped write it. And now, dear listener, it's time. Time to close the pouch. Time to let the curtain fall. Let the taste of time linger on your tongue as the stories spiral into dreams. The night is soft now, like a velvet curtain finally drawn. You lie still, the ghost of honey and salt still warm in your mouth. Around you, the stage fades into stars, the voices into wind, the applause into a heartbeat barely audible. Every sound slows. Even your breath becomes part of the silence. No need to remember the plot anymore. Let it slip gently away. The donkey monologue, the fig throwing, the almond tossed in perfect arc. All of it blurs into a comforting hum, like distant flute music, or the crunch of a wafer underfoot. You've had your fill. You've tasted myth. You've walked with Dionysus, not in the wild chaos of wine-fueled frenzy, but in the quiet joy of a shared snack under the soft hush of twilight. Let your shoulders relax now. Let the world drift. There's nothing left to do, no more plays to catch or pouches to fill. Just the cool press of sheets, the rhythm of your own slowing pulse, and the echo of laughter wrapped in fig leaves. And maybe, tomorrow, a faint craving for something strange and sweet. But for now, you rest. You dream of barley and pomegranate, of crumb-strewn stages and grape-smeared gods, of stories chewed slowly, then savored long after the curtain falls. You are full. You are still. You are home.